Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight on this beautiful summer afternoon. And we are really pleased to be collaborating with the Science Museum and the Shukhov Foundation for this particular display. In a way, this exhibition has been really a natural extension of our exhibition program. And if any of you were here to see last winter the Utopia Limited exhibition, we collaborated also with Henry Milner on reconstructing iconic constructivist works. If we could have John Milner to come up here. He's a professor at the Courtauld Institute, and he knows many, many things. He taught a lot of us who work here at CRAD, so very excited to see his presentation.
Yes, one thing we have to get clear from the start, I think, is that a lot of this has been made possible by the Shukhov Foundation, and about the first of three Vladimir Shukhov people, the third of whom we have as an honored guest at the front of the room this evening. It's been a revelation in many ways to be associated with this project, a project for which the tower itself is, in the model form, is too high because of this ceiling, but it's also in its present format because the Science Museum on the first public showing of the tower in its full power. But this also, I mention this for those who haven't really had time to look at this properly, it also demonstrates the structural process of putting up the tower, because this is a tower which was built pretty well without any scaffolding and must have arisen like a very extraordinary Martian creature or something appearing in the city skyline. Now, I want to look at this from maybe 5 points of view, quite briefly, this evening, because there are lots of other people saying things too. This is a wonderful discovery of this image. It's a photo montage of an arch from a building, I don't know which building, with the tower in the background, with Shukhov's tower in the background with its pretty new format at that time, but with workers associated with putting up the tower, as well as two older people, one of them probably, I guess, Vladimir Shukhov, the designer here, also with some children, and an extraordinary set of people. What I want you not to miss, and you can see it most easily on the wall there, is these people. These are people, these little creatures that look like flies in a cobweb. Can you imagine trying to work in this extraordinary environment where nothing seems to be horizontal, and which is reaching terrific heights without scaffolding, which appears to grow overnight sometimes? So the Shukhov Tower was never quite without its interpretations. I mean, obviously, in a sense, it was an engineering structure of great brilliance, with a highly practical and economic features demanding a neat solution, which we have here, which is still standing, and which is, we hope, going to stand a lot longer. But it was interpreted one way or another, visually, especially in photography, from the start. So although it's a practical proposition, certainly rather brilliant engineering, it does immediately, as Tilly has suggested, take on the role in the cultural life and the identity of the city. It still stands proud above many of the views of Moscow, and is very familiar and something a lot of people are very fond with, and which people climb illicitly sometimes, at least on one occasion dressed as Spider-Man. So I want us to look at what it is itself very, very briefly, but also to look at various ways in which it's been interpreted or presented. The idea of a photo montage is very interesting. It's something that Lisitsky and a lot of constructivists were doing. But Shukhov is of a different generation. He was already a celebrated engineer in the 19th century. He was the man who put the roof on GUM, the Universal Store opposite the Kremlin, for example, and a lot of very adventurous designs. He's the only man that I know of, and I confess I'm not a historian of engineering, who had the brilliant idea of a lighthouse being open work so that the sea could crash through it. That's a clever idea, I think, although rather dangerous going up the steps to the room at the top, I think. So a very brilliant man anyway, whose interest in tensile structures was way ahead of his time, and which continues to impress people. So here's this sense of pride. Something great has happened. Terrifying in the process, new process of construction. No scaffolding. Simple as that, quite astonishing. And you can see with the model over there a reflection of this constructive system. And it really is a very brilliant blend of geometry and of metal material structure. And you can see how it rose and rose and rose, because each next step was built inside the last one and then hoisted into place. So you can see them nesting in this way here, and then that goes on, and then the next one goes on, and up it goes right to the top. So it's a process, and there are very beautiful engineering drawings and studies. This is one in which it says it's for a wireless tower of 350 meters by Shukhov. So it's a scientific engineering achievement which occurred in Russia and which has not really found its equivalent in the West until recent times. Here you can see, get some sense of scale from the stage of building such a tower. It's a system. And it interests me to compare this system of an engineering structure going together with this photograph, which is of Tatlin's tower, the model for Tatlin's tower, which is much more full of cultural connotations, of propaganda, of building the new society. It's a promotional image of construction, meaning constructing the new world, if you like. And it's a very interesting comparison. I'm not going to pursue it at length, but the Shukhov Tower is engineering that takes on cultural, overgrown with cultural ideas later. Tatlin's tower was to be the cockpit of planet Earth, the center of world government from the start. So everything about it was ideological, propagandist, and not really engineering. Indeed, Tatlin said, and it was to be 3 times the height of the Eiffel Tower. And Tatlin, when questioned about the engineering, obviously the model was made of wood, said we can employ engineers. Now, he had been to Paris, he had seen the Eiffel Tower, he'd seen the big wheel, the big Ferris wheel, so he had seen big engineering structures, and he knew they could be made to work. But this is a different world. This is Russian constructivism, and in his very short writings, Tatlin did pay homage to engineers, but he was onto a different game altogether, really. And he was just ahead of Shukhov in terms of the date of the tower, but they're more or less contemporary. And Shukhov was not messing with culture in a direct way. He was trying to fulfill a very demanding engineering project as economically and effectively as possible. I don't think in itself it had propaganda element built into it. The function had a propaganda element in it once it was built, i.e. Moscow addressing the world through its radio. Now, some of the photographs of it in its earliest stages are very beautiful things in themselves. Here are 2 women who may be doing the shopping. They may be road builders. Women did a lot of rough work in the early 20s, but you see this great Martian visitor in the background, this alien, a shape, a form alien to the city as it stood, especially as there was still a lot of wooden houses, but clearly a presence, a strong identity of its own. Here it is again, an early stage with snow all around and dwarfing the buildings beneath it. We may see that this had a practical, useful purpose, and that it is something that people had not seen before. And it's interesting to compare it very briefly with the Eiffel Tower, Tour Eiffel in Paris. Here it is under construction for the 1889 World Fair in Paris, because of course Eiffel too, or Eiffel, was a great engineer. His great book on his tower is full of most marvelous engineering drawings which are comparable with these. But what is the purpose of the Eiffel Tower? I mean, we know what Shukhov's tower was for, to broadcast radio to the world. This is much more mysterious, and it's engineering aim is to stand up, I think. It has been used as a radio transmitter from time to time, but it was also attempted to use it as a sort of unloading point or a landing point for Zeppelins. Except it was so frightening to get from the Zeppelin to the top of the Eiffel Tower. But it wasn't good behavior, this kind of building, and there was a great outcry in 1889 about the Eiffel Tower's hideousness. And of course, it's now become a great icon of the city. Some people say it was to show the Germans, who'd won the Franco-Prussian War decisively, that the French could do engineering too and make it elegant. So there's something, I think there's an Apollinaire drawing of the Eiffel Tower as a stockinged leg. You know, there's a kind of fishnet leg sticking up in Paris. So engineering plus elegance was something that Paris was trying to put across. But this wonderful structure by Vladimir Shukhov is in some ways more original, more pure, because its form is determined by what the material will do, this extraordinary idea of wrapping the geometry around an empty space and the method of construction. It has very particular range of viewpoints, which, as Henry pointed out to me, are possible. They look highly original in photographs, but it allows certain viewpoints. One of them is this one. This is a photograph by Rodchenko, constructivist, painter, constructor, photographer, taken in 1929. This recurs, this image, again and again, because it is it's a beautiful, inspiring, exciting image, and people adopted it as a symbol of the New Age. That was a point, as Tilly has made, it was a moment, as Tilly has made this point, when electricity and radio was suddenly possible. And there's one line of depictions of the Shukhov Tower, which isn't to do with its immediate practical structure, but which is anti-religious, and it's worth making this point. Here is Mayakovsky drawing of it's entitled "Neither sorcerers nor God nor the servants of God will be any use to us." And here you see Zeus is trying to strike this worker dead with a flashing thunderbolt, but he's already installed an electric a lightning conductor. So Soviet man in the early 20s is facing a world in which religion is discouraged, in which science is great, in which engineering is not to be looked down upon, in which it has a crucial role to play. Here is an image by Vladimir Krinsky, which shows the conversion of the interior of a Russian Orthodox church into a factory, where the workers have taken over, the Donbass workers. Proletariat of the world unite, few angels still looking down on it all. The church was very much frowned upon and became a sort of factory for the godless. There was a magazine called The Godless. And here we see another design by Krinsky of a very simplified version reference to the Shukhov Tower. I've got the photograph alongside. And coming out the top is this word, всем, to everybody, for everyone. And it's taken over from the Orthodox Church, from the Catholic Church, and from the mosque. It's a new world that is materialistic. And here's a design for a mural, a street decoration, by this same Krinsky person saying, "All hail the Soviets. The tower is for everyone. It is the mouthpiece. The radio is the mouthpiece of the revolution." So this is ideology creeping up on Shukhov, if you like, and the voice of Moscow was going to be internationally broadcast by this tower. There was in the early 20s a kind of radio fetishism. Again, this is Krinsky just as it's convenient to show. But this monastery has been taken over as a radio station, and all of these pylons and cables and aerials and receivers are filling the skyline. Here's another church that's become a factory. And there's a great new star building going up in the middle of it. Likewise, there were a number of important artists who trained as engineers. Nam Gabo is a famous case, who studied engineering in Germany and became an important exponent of constructivism in the early 20s. Here's his design for a radio station. It's a great hodgepodge with some of the Eiffel Tower's legs, bits of valve and pieces from the inside of some device, making up this just a radio fantasia, really. And likewise, some of the works on paper that Soviet architects were developing when there was hardly any money to build anything, like the colossal palace of the Soviets by the Vytuleva brothers. The whole business of radio, aerials, and transmission and receiving is a crucial part of the design. And the idea that the revolution could have a public voice had a great impact. This is a radio orator, so-called, pronouncing Lenin's speeches for the street. And here's an image by Lysitsky for his book, for the Voice, for reading out loud, of Mayakovsky poems, in which he identifies this trumpet-headed man with Mayakovsky with being the poet of the revolution, the orator. Tatlin's Tower, this is the model that was displayed in the Academy building in Petrograd, was to have a hemispherical radio station on the top for broadcasting political decisions to the world. Shukhov's, well, Tatlin's has a look of a figure about it with a spine and a forward step. Shukhov doesn't have anything of this. In fact, Shukhov's tower, you're always looking at the main facade of Shukhov's tower because it goes all the way around. This is a feature of the Gherkin, and as you'll probably realize, the building known as the Gherkin in London, it is an adaptation of Shukhov's system of construction. And you can also see similarities with the great court roof in the British Museum. This was a very important way of working. You can't get a false view of the Gherkin building by Norman Foster, and you can't get it with Shukhov. This is a sort of sentinel creature. Now, this fascination with radio also embraced this fascination with electricity. Power to the people, power to the saviors. Installation of light bulbs is going to produce, what shall we say, enlightenment. And nothing else is going to do it. This is a Mayakovsky stenciled poster. This became a great theme of the old world and the new world, of the new regime as against the old regime. This is a famous photograph by Arkady Shaikov called Lenin's Lab. A couple of peasants trying to figure out what you do with the light bulb. And Shukhov's tower, in various disguises, appears in posters and public images of the electrification of Russia, which was one of Lenin's great plans from 1920 onwards. Communism plus Soviet power is communism plus electrification. That's Shukhov's tower, much simplified and modified, and here is another of the great Shukhov engineering projects, which is this one, which is the towers by the Oka River, one of which has been demolished, I think, now. So here we see a highly politicized drive in which electrification and radio play an important part. So here's a poster of Lenin, who seems to be responsible for all this, the Soviets and electrification. This is the basis of New World. This is Lutz's design of, to do with this theme of Lenin introducing the electrification of Russia. Now the tower itself stands in very splendid position. The oldest photographs display these very beautiful wooden houses. But very soon it becomes a centerpiece for a whole new building project and a whole new vision of society. And at the same time, it becomes part of the Russian sense of power. Power of radio, power of electricity. So here are two fascinating photographs of the Shtusev, that's not the Shukhov tower, in which the image from Rodchenkov on this side and Lisitsky on this side, show an armed guard with the tower, as if they're two different expressions of Soviet power, as if the soldier, the army, and electrification are two forms of Soviet power. This is a photographer called Zilma on the same theme. This is Zilma as well, and they're fascinating. I'll be very quick now. Current interest in the tower is, of course, due to the prospect of its demolition. Its function as a radio mast does no longer really exist. It is suffering damage, it's suffering repair, and it's already had support of various kinds from Norman Foster, and has evoked great interest with photographers like Richard Pear and so on too. So it is, again, a live issue. And the idea of the engineer-architect is still useful to us, and it's still very much in the air. And as we have Vladimir Shukhov with us, he can confirm he's a living embodiment of this link, in a sense. But he was there with someone like Lisitsky, who trained as an engineer. And this link between new forms of building and engineering is a crucial and important one, too. So the tower could take on all kinds of political significance, like the Eiffel Tower. And here we have the Eiffel Tower from 1889 and the Soviet Pavilion in 1937. And this idea of engineering and culture and power is available in all of these. And Shukhov's tower can be seen in the context of growing number of plans for colossal projects. This is Constantine Melnikov's design for Christopher Columbus Monument. This is his design for the Narkomtyazh-Prom building, the heavy industry building. A colossus, a whole new world on a whole different scale. This is Leonidov, same building competition. And they were not good neighbors either, in the sense that here's Leonidov's amazing and impressive great building design. Here are some basils. You know, this was going to completely transform the heart of Moscow. And it's largely engineering. Here's a Richard Pear photograph and a close-up. And here's a celebratory image from a couple of years ago, looking as if the tower has been adopted as a fun focal point for cultural activity or something. And that is what's in danger. And in some ways, a lot of people feel that it should be the center of a special cultural area in Moscow. I want to finish with one very brief point. It's become clear, not only that Shukhov was a very, very good man with an amazingly important family and heritage that's worth preserving, but that the more you study this building, its astonishing editing down to very few elements means that it is full of potential for photographers, as we've seen, but also for a closer examination in some modern ways of recording these things. So it seems to me it has potential in all of these fields, and we can talk about them later a little bit. What I want to show you at the moment is just a sequence of images that have emerged from studying the mathematics and the structure of this great tower, which I think give you a hint of some of the subtleties of it, which are by no means always immediately obvious. These are cross-sections, if you like, of computer-aided design features of the tower structure. This is a side view. These are the elements before they go together. This necklace-like structure is, again, the tower. If you look at these highly edited images that give you just part of a computer-aided design file, then you begin to see a lot more about how the structure itself works, because some elements have been taken out to make it visible. So this kind of thing is astonishing to me. And it is a kind of graphic spatial effect, which is almost like being in the tower itself. So these emerge directly from the computer modeling of the tower. I think they're pretty amazing things. Not least because they do sort of address the world. What I mean is, some of these images are worthy of a book on cosmology or astronomy, for example. These are the connections that join the bits together in the tower. Whether you're looking down, is this looking down into the tower or up into it? Or does it matter? Looking up the tower.
It's the section of every room.
So here's the cosmos looking at you, or is it the Shukhov Tower broadcasting to the world? That's it from me for the moment. Thank you.